Good morning, and welcome to Redeemer Lutheran Church. I'm Pastor Gary Lodeholt. It's been 20 years, but I remember that it started like any other day. Bright and sunny, and everyone got up and went about their business. But there were some on this day who were about a bad and nefarious business. Most of us found out about it a little after 9 a.m. when the first plane struck the North Tower. And then, not long after that, the second plane hit the South Tower. It was such shocking news that most of us remember where we were when we heard about it. And those of us who could sat glued to our TVs throughout the day. And then when the towers fell, our hearts fell with them. It must have been a bit like that for the Philistines as Goliath slowly teetered and tottered and then crashed to the ground. He was their tower of strength, the symbol of their power and might. He was tall and made to stand tall, giant, unconquerable. This week we are exploring some bad guys of the Bible and perhaps discovering we may have a little more in common with them than we do with the heroes. Today we want to talk about Goliath. He was probably the kid who had facial hair in the 3rd grade. Of course, that's not in the Bible, but Goliath just gives you that kind of impression. Big, hulking, mean, physical. Sort of the man who, if he came up to bat in a baseball game, he would glower at the pitcher with a look so severe that the pitcher would probably toss it up underhanded easy and then duck in case the ball came screaming back. He probably never said excuse me or pardon me. He probably burped at the table and got whatever he wanted. He was absolutely the biggest truck on the road, and the wise thing to do was to get absolutely out of his way. The Philistines and the Israelites were at war. Under King Saul, the Israelites were an up-and-coming nation, and as they expanded their borders, they came smack up against the Philistines, also a growing nation. The Philistines were settled in a region along the Mediterranean Sea to the south, sort of where the Gaza Strip is today. And like the old Western shootouts, the area just wasn't big enough for the both of them, so one of them had to go. Goliath was probably actually a mercenary who had settled in Gath and who had hired himself out to the Philistines in this war. He was an imposing figure. The Bible says that he was 6 cubits high, which is roughly about 10 feet. His coat of armor weighed about 150 pounds, and his spearhead alone came in at 19 pounds. By any measure, he was big and strong and intimidating. That wasn't the worst part. Only a fool would fight Goliath, and so as the two armies encamped against each other in the valley of Elah, each day Goliath would march forward alone with his shield bearer and issue his challenge. Choose your champion, he would thunder. Let him come and face me. The whole war will be settled between the two of us. I defy you to send someone to challenge me. And on it went like that every day. And when no one came, Goliath would laugh. And the Israelites took one look at him and trembled in fear. Until David came. He was just a boy sent to deliver a care package to his older brothers in the army. And when he heard Goliath's challenge, he vowed to fight the giant himself. His brothers called him a fool, but it wasn't long before David stood before King Saul. I am a shepherd, he told the king, and I have faced lions and bears, and the Lord has delivered me. And just like that, the Lord will deliver me now against this heathen who dares to mock the armies of the Lord's people. And Saul let him try. Well, you know the story from there. David chose his stones and then stalked up to Goliath. Goliath laughed at the boy before him, but David said, I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, and when you fall, all the earth will know that there is a God in Israel. The battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands. And as Goliath's laughter echoed in the hills, the stone flew, and Goliath was down. David ran forward and cut off Goliath's head with his sword, and their enemies turned and fled. And right there, as Goliath topples to the ground, it's not too hard for us to see ourselves. Goliath defied God. Goliath was sure of himself, sure of his own abilities, sure of his own strength to take on all comers and win. And lots of times we're like that too. We're sure we can handle things, sure of our own strength and abilities to take what comes and handle it easily. We think we can do it on our own and that we don't really need God. We must, or why else would we turn so often to God only at the end of things when we have exhausted every other avenue of help? Why else would we tend to use prayer as our last resort instead of the first? We're big and hulking in our pride, tall and gigantic in our self-sufficiency. But little David knows the truth. The battle is the Lord's. And maybe what we learn from Goliath is to entrust our battles to the Lord a little more often. Pride goeth before the fall. God goeth before the faithful. Thanks for watching, and remember to let this day belong to God.